Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Last Christian. My name is J.D. Williams, located here in beautiful East Texas, and all the way from New York City is my brother in Christ there, my co-host, Mr. David Paxton.
Hey, how you doing? I'm coming out of the time warp today because I think we're moving faster than ever.
Yeah.
But today's exciting because guess who? Guess what, J.D.?
Well, we are lucky, we are blessed to have join us today our UK contributor. This gentleman here, Mr. Mark Sutherland. And Mark, I know your TV, your movie, your all that kind of good stuff, and you can, David, and you can talk about all that. You got so much expertise in so many different areas, but the expertise that we're looking for from you today is everything UK, everything Europe, and everything Israel. Because as the title screen said there, time's running out. And I am of the opinion, and this is personal opinion, even though this is a newscast, I'm a member of the U.S. Press Association, so as we get into stories, keep that in mind. But, I'm of the opinion that this is the last election being held everywhere in the world. In the UK, in Germany, in France, and in the United States of America. And this is our last chance to get things right and to get on the right side. And you're going to make a choice, and the choice that people are going to make is eternal. That is my personal opinion, and I'm just going to start by asking both of you guys if you agree or disagree, and I'll start with you, Mark.
JD, David, thank you for having me. It's lovely to see you. I think you're right. I think you've just said an extremely profound statement. One of the comments from our election is for Christians to pray that whatever government comes in, whatever shape, that we have a framework that allows us to preach the gospel and that is not against that, even though I would say through laws and everything else is very negative against it. Of Christians in the public space. So I hear you very loudly, JD. I'm not saying I'm finding some of that comfortable. On the one hand, we know, praise God, that Jesus is returning. It's the process that we're going to go through leading up to that could seem a little bit scary at times.
Yeah.
But I hear you very loudly.
David, what do you think?
You ever been to the amusement park and now they got these crazy roller coasters that are like 7 miles high, and they flip you upside down and all that stuff?
Yeah. That's
what I view this is what we're doing here. But then you really got to know, okay, they did test this thing and I am strapped in. And that's what I see Jesus as he is our shoulder hoster in this roller coaster ride. And on the other side of it, we're going to be like, wow, can we do that again? And like, no.
So it's a one-time deal, yeah. All right, guys, well, we got a lot to cover today, and so I'm going to get right to it. And the first thing, the elephant in the room, the presidential debate, and the fallout from that presidential debate is incredible. And there's a lot of people got a lot of splaining to do, in my opinion, because, you got everybody before the debate was, Biden's on top of his game. He's sharp as a tack. You ought to see him in private. He does more in an hour than most people do in a day. All this kind of crap was preached to us for now 5 years. 5 years. Not 5 months, not 5 days, 5 years that we've heard this crap. And finally, in the last time they had a presidential debate, Trump interrupted too much. That's what killed him. He interrupted too much. He didn't let the guy show his true mental state. Well, this time around, Biden made the critical mistake. And anyway, I'll get to all that in a minute. Let's begin with what's going on now.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
US President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump went head-to-head in a fiery presidential debate, televised on Thursday. Hosted in the US city of Atlanta by CNN, this was the first debate of the year between the two presumptive nominees, who are vying to return to the White House in November's election. The pair clashed over immigration, foreign policy, and abortion, though the age of both candidates was also in the spotlight.
I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me.
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it.
There was no audience and microphones were muted when it wasn't the candidate's time to speak. Both Democrats and Republicans are acknowledging it was a troublesome debate for the current president, who spoke with a hoarse voice and often stumbled.
Yeah, he had a cold. That's what they said after the debate started. Yeah, I've never had a cold that bad that it's affected my memory. I don't know about you guys, but, that's never happened to me with a cold or a flu or any other kind of thing, Anyway, here's what really happened, people, for everybody to know. Donald Trump challenged Joe Biden to a debate, and no one thought he would take it, okay? Including the Democrats. They had no desire to get onto a stage with Donald Trump. So what they did is they came out with rules that they were absolutely certain, and they were all laughing and slapping their, this is going to be great, sending this to Trump. Where we'll only have a debate on our network, which is completely 100% anti-you, okay? We will bring out 2 commentators who've compared you to Hitler, who have said our great national nightmare is over when you lost, supposedly, to Joe Biden in 2020. We're going to cut the microphone where you can't talk and can't interrupt him and maybe throw him off his game a little bit. We're not going to have an audience, so there's nobody to play to. That takes away one of your strengths. And when they sent it to him, they said, there's no way he's accepting this. He's just going to yell and he's going to scream, and then we'll be able to come out and say, see, we gave Trump a chance, and he didn't do it. Instead, within 31 hundredths of a second, he said, sure, I'll be happy to do it. And then he went out there and embarrassed Joe Biden, who basically embarrassed himself. And he also showed the world that what we've been saying for a long time is 100% true. He's senile. He has Alzheimer's. It is an embarrassment that he is where he is. His wife should be charged with elder abuse. If, as a matter of fact, after the debate, she went out and started screaming, "Oh, you did great, Joe. You answered every question." Of course, how you answered it was pretty stupid, but he answered every question. But here's the sad part. Here's the sad part, and here's the scary part. Not only did we watch that debate here in the United States of America, Mark, you saw it in the United Kingdom. The leaders in China saw it. The leaders in Russia saw it. The leaders in Iran saw it. The leaders in North Korea saw it. The leaders everywhere in the world saw it, and they all looked around and they said, the United States of America, they might have a leader, but it's not that guy. Joe Biden is not the president of the United States. He's not really acting, okay? He has no clue what's going on. If you looked at those absent eyes during that debate, that spoke volumes. I've seen it in other people with dementia. I have seen that look. You can't hide it. You can't make it up. If you got it, you got it, and he's got it. Mark, what do you think?
I think it's extremely sad, and the key thing is this, is that the President of the United States has always been seen as leader of the free world.
Amen.
Particularly from the Second World War, and the fact that industrially, everything else, you could, as a nation, you could not be matched. Now, we don't have time to discuss history from then until now to reach to where we've reached this point. But I would say to you, I agree, it's an absolute embarrassment. It's a bit like our Prime Minister when he declared an election that is happening for us next week, on the 4th of July, he declared it in the pouring rain. There was no umbrella. In other words, what I'm saying is there is no stature of office. There is no one saying, I am a statesman. I actually am. This is our country. I'm representing the country. I am representing the most powerful nation in the world. And I would say, JD, without any hyperbole, is that I think that is all deliberate projection. That is all deliberate projection to make you look extremely weak, to then give a projection psychologically of everyone in the United States going, well, look at the problems, look at us, we can't do this, we can't fix that. In other words, where is something within the American psyche which is, yeah, God bless America, we can do this, we can tackle this, etc., etc. Right. Now, sometimes, of course, certain things go wrong, but there is one of the beautiful things, and I'm not just saying this for the sake of it, but within America, what I like is the yes, we can do attitude. We can do that. We're gonna get this done.
And that's fading, Mark. That's fading.
I know. I agree. I agree with you. I also know that it is fading, and sadly, it's going into this sort of museum of Americana, along with Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, and some other beautiful things that I love about America, whether it's cowboy films, what you've grown up with, and this is what it represents. So I think it's really appalling, and you're absolutely right, because would China be circling Taiwan? Would Putin in regard to Ukraine?
Well, okay, here's my point on this. Now every country on the world has been put on notice. You've got until January the 20th of 2025 to do whatever you're going to do, because the United States is hamstrung until that date. But after that date, then Daddy's back. That's really what that's my personal opinion. I think Trump's going to win. And up until now, I didn't think he was going to be able to serve, win or not. But I think he's going to be back. David, what's your immediate thoughts on all this?
Well, you forgot one of the rules was they had to take the bathroom breaks every 20 minutes or so for poopy pants. Yeah. And it's funny saying, "Oh, I got my handicap down to 6 in golf," but his wife had to help him on that 6-inch step off of the stage.
That was sad.
At the end, and he's looking around like you just gave him ice cream again. And you're right, it's just like it's a laughing stock. And I think people know that when they see the leader. Now, Trump may be the hero that we need. And so now we go on the other side of this theory. Right. They're setting him up, and they put him up there on purpose to make him look like a fool, because even CNN said it was a debacle. And all
MSNBC as well. MSNBC as well.
And they're all like this clown. So they're either gonna say, "Oh, that's why we lost, because he's a clown," or they're gonna replace him with somebody else. Oh, look at that! He got sick, so he can't serve now. So we got to put camel toe in there. So that's kind of where I see everything. But again, this all ties back to the Bible. They have to create a chaotic situation, and they'll do it any way they can, because out of chaos is the order, and this is their so Chorus Unum. How's that go on our dollar? Something Latin. So yeah, they're looking to cause the chaos so they can usher in their one world leader. And then when the bride is taken out, that's going to be the aliens. They're going to say, "Look, the whole world has to get together now because the aliens took all those evil Christian people."
Well, Mark, on our last show, came across something. And I'm glad you're here. I kept this because I knew you were coming on today. And this is a guy, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. His name is Uri Geller. And he is insistent that that aliens built the original temple for the Jewish nation, as well as the pyramids, as well as Stonehenge, and that they could possibly assist Israel in another war. He thinks that they've already assisted in previous wars. And I
What about the Georgia Guidestones? Did the aliens make that too?
Probably, according to this guy.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of this guy before, Mark? And
I know Uri Geller very well. He's
Okay.
been on our television screens for a long time.
Okay.
His specialization would be taking knives and forks and spoons and rubbing them between his fingers, and then they would bend. So there is certain gifting. You and I would debate where that comes from. And also, on that point, I'm not an expert on it. Our friends L.A. Marzulli are, Derek Gilbert is, David is. I'll throw this out, that we have to then look at the Bible and look at the Genesis 6 verses 1 to 8, the fallen angels coming down to earth and having sex with human women, and then the Nephilim and all the rest. That fits within there. Cycloptic architecture down in Cusco. How are these big stones moved? How are they put in within fractions of an inch, or fractions and fractions of a millimeter? How is all this connected? So I'll leave that there. But what you've said about this whole thing of the deception, we thought it, as David said, with the roller coaster, we thought it was going to get, it couldn't get any wilder. It is going to get wilder. And,
Yeah.
and going back to what you were saying about Biden, what is really interesting is that he went out and did a debate before the Democratic Congress, before they get together to actually ratify him officially as the presidential nominee, even though there he is. David raises a very good point. Could they get rid of him? Could Gavin Newsom slide in? Could Kamala be temporary president for a few months? We don't know. But what we do know, and this is the challenge, and JD, and I hear you very loudly. Would I like everything to come back and America and the UK to have a few years of being restored? Yes, I would. But if I'm honest with you right now, I don't see it that way. And I don't say that. I'm not predicting anything, but I have to look at what's happening in the Bible. And David is absolutely right that your nation, and I grieve over this because I have many, many friends on your side of the pond. I love your nation as I do my own country, but God is judging us, and Israel is the stone. And how our attitudes towards Israel, and also our attitudes towards abortion, our attitude in how we actually treat God within our nations, he is speaking to us. And I do not see things going well at all. But our challenge is, and it is an exciting time to be alive, and I'm saying this myself more and more and more and more, is that we have to pray that we have the space to preach the gospel. Persecution is coming. We have to use every single means that we can, whether we are making films, whether we're having these discussions and podcasts. So all of this, JD, is on the table. It's all in the mix. This is where we're at, and I think time is running out. But you and I, we would not sit here and we're not date setters, but we are called to look at the signs of the time.
Amen. And now we're going to get in deep into, especially in the second half of the show. Mainly, the whole second half is going to be in the UK as well as in Israel. And I really want to break that down a lot because you're the expert. That's the reason that I begged really for you to come back on here today, because I really want to get the insight there, as well as how people over there are viewing Israel right now. I know here in the United States, I can't think of a time when anybody was protesting Jews being in the United States of America. I can't ever remember that, ever. And now it seems like the whole country's gone crazy if you're under 30. Basically that's the age group. Maybe there's others, I don't know. But, just from what I'm seeing, it looks like a younger generation is out there with Palestinian flags and an uneducated look at what's going on in Israel. And they're forcing the United States to do what I have said is going to happen, and that's to pick the wrong team. And I heard nothing in that debate, nothing, other than just a passing mention of Israel. I mean, just like, I think Trump said something about they never would have invaded Israel if I was president. And I think that was it. I think that was the only comment about Israel in the entire debate. Yet we passed a bill to send a lot of weapons to Israel and then didn't do it. We got a president who wants to play both sides against the middle, I guess. I mean, if he even, after that debate, I'm not even sure he knows that there is a war in Israel. I mean, now, maybe that sounds cruel, but I mean, after watching that debate, do you really think he's got a grip on anything in the world? David, go ahead.
No. So, yeah, I mean, I just saw the Border Patrol, because he got on there and mumbled some stuff, and in the middle of the mumble you hear, oh, and the border, I got the full support of the Border Patrol.
Right.
And so they immediately came out and said, we do not support, nor have we ever supported Biden.
Nor will we.
On a big thing. Nor will we.
Right.
We will not, we have not, and we do not.
Yeah.
Like big time, all over the news. No, he's lying. We do not support him whatsoever. So, yeah, he has no clue what's going on. He's just a puppet on a string.
Yeah, I agree. Mark, I don't know. I guess I'm going to get into this a little bit here. Are people in Europe, UK particularly, but Europe, are they just more politically aware? Do they keep up with things better than we do here in the United States, or what? I mean, the reason I'm asking that question is because of the direction that the polls and everything are going in the UK right now, which, again, we're going to get into more in the second half of the show. But it looks like that people over there are saying, hey, our government's crazy. We're done with them. Get them out. Let's try something else. Are they just more aware, or am I seeing this incorrectly?
No, I think you're asking a very, very, very important question. There are many people that are aware. We are suffering the same propaganda that you have. Mm-hmm. So the classic was in the presidential election in 2020 when Fox News called Arizona for Biden. Yeah. Which then saying, because of the time difference between New York and Arizona, mm-hmm. and there were people still able to go out and vote in New York, they might have thought, well, what's the point in voting? Biden's won in Arizona, which must mean he's going to win elsewhere. So in other words, the polls do not believe any of the polls in regard to our election. Do not believe that. And because of some of the interviews I've been having the privilege to do, on the ground, there are many people that are awake. There are many people that will not tell you which way they are going to vote because mm-hmm. they are then concerned about the abuse that they would be having, etc., etc. We can get mm-hmm. more into this. I'm going to say the obvious, of course. Your press is controlled, is so controlled. There is the other thing of, how much foreign news do you really have? I mean, that's gone on for some time, mm-hmm. and I'm not being rude, but that is the case. Over here, I think we have seen more flagrant abuse from mainstream media and misdirection, and particularly by the BBC. There's a recent scandal involving Channel 4 and using an actor and accusing Reform UK, the front man being Nigel Farage, mm-hmm. of coming at, the activist coming up with racist comments and all the rest, turns out to be an actor, turns out to be a put-up job. Mm-hmm. What a surprise. They are coming at us absolutely with bowling that we have never seen. Our big concern, people are fed up and there is huge voter apathy, but it is being revealed that you've got Labour and another con trick called the Conservatives. They are exactly the same, along with Lib Dems, but there is a group of people under the guise of Reform UK, and I've had chats, I've interviewed these people. They know about the World Economic Forum, etc., 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 digital currency. They know about these things, but the big problem is when you bring them into the mainstream and start talking about them, then you get tarred with being a complete nutter and a fruit bat and a loon. But the fact is that the Overton window, as we say, is moving a bit like on your side of the pond with the Hunter Biden laptop.
Yeah.
Suddenly everyone, and the fact that he has been to court. I will say this. It's interesting. They put up Biden as their candidate. And as a dear friend of ours said, Chad Riley, I give him a shout out, put a meme out there that said, and your guy wasn't fit enough to stand in a court and a trial to answer in regard to a legal case, in regard to his shenanigans. But he seems suddenly you're putting him up for a debate.
As president
Everything
of the
is
United
being,
States.
yeah, absolutely. And everything is being deliberately turned upside down. And as the Bible said, you know, bad will become good, good will become bad.
Amen.
And this is what is going on. The standards are disappearing, but people are awake. But I will say this, JD, that I believe this passionately. There are more people awake outside the church who would not call themselves Christians to world events and what's going on than there is in the church in this country. And it grieves me to say that, and I find it an utter disgrace, to be honest. If people were becoming, if we've got people becoming Christians now, I don't even know what church I would send them to up and down this country. I don't know where is it. There is only one or two. Where is a safe place to send them in their new faith and for them to be discipled? That is how bad I view it. Sorry, I've gone into a slightly different subject.
No, it's okay.
But
it's okay.
People are aware of what is going on. They're, particularly with what's happened in Holland in elections, with what's happening in France.
Speaking of Holland, their ex-president is now going to be the leader of the UN. They just voted in as the new Secretary General or whatever they call him. I don't know. The world is crazy. It's gone crazy just in the last few years. I don't recognize almost anywhere in the world from what it was 10 years ago. It's just things have gone completely upside down. Now, we're at the end of the first half here, and we haven't got into the UK yet. We hadn't got into France yet. We hadn't got into Israel yet. And we're going to do all that in the second half. And I hope that you guys will stick in there with us. Again, we are honored today to have Mr. Mark Sutherland join us. So, Mark, hang in there. Second half is basically all going to be over there in Europe. So we'll be right back.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm Sally Patterson with a look back at some of the week's top stories.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
US President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump went head-to-head in a fiery presidential debate, televised on Thursday. Hosted in the US city of Atlanta by CNN, this was the first debate of the year between the two presumptive nominees, who are vying to return to the White House in November's election. The pair clashed over immigration, foreign policy and abortion, though the age of both candidates was also in the spotlight.
I spent half my career being criticized as being the youngest person in politics. I was the second youngest person ever elected to the United States Senate, and now I'm the oldest. This guy's 3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record, look at what I've done, look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me.
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them. We made it public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it.
There was no audience and microphones were muted when it wasn't the candidate's time to speak. Both Democrats and Republicans are acknowledging it was a troublesome debate for the current president, who spoke with a hoarse voice and often stumbled. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange landed back in his native Australia this week after striking a plea deal with US prosecutors. His wife Stella told media he needed time to recover and to get used to freedom after a 14-year legal battle with US officials who accused him of leaking classified documents. Chris Gilbert reports.
After spending 1,900 days in Belmarsh prison in the UK and years in exile in London's Ecuadorian embassy, a US judge has ruled that his time already served fulfills a sentence for breaking the Espionage Act for leaking sensitive US government documents. Assange pled guilty, conceding he did violate the Espionage Act, but maintains the law is contradictory to the First Amendment, which he claims he should be protected under as a journalist.
Mark Rutte will be the next leader of the North Atlantic Council, or NATO, the security alliance announced this week. A major task for the former Dutch Prime Minister will be orchestrating NATO's ongoing response to the war in Ukraine. William Denzelo reports from Brussels, where the council is headquartered.
NATO's current Secretary-General says the organisation is in good hands. Rutte served as Dutch Prime Minister 4 times, spanning nearly 14 years. Providing ongoing support for Ukraine will be a top priority when Rutte takes over the post in October. Analysts say the job could be complicated further if Donald Trump wins the US presidency in November. Trump has disparaged the alliance, accusing fellow members of not pulling their weight.
That's your roundup of news making headlines this week. Sally Patterson reporting.
And welcome back, everybody, to the second half of Last Christian. Again, my name is J.D. Williams here in Texas. That's David Paxton on your left. He's located in New York City. And then from way over in the United Kingdom, we have our KRRB contributor, Mr. Mark Sutherland. And that is probably, Mark, you're probably, that last one is the least of your credits. And I know that because, you're world renowned in other areas. So anyway, I want to get now onto Europe. We covered the United States, and the United States is in trouble. Hopefully we get our act together. I will say this before we move on. I used to be a member of the Democratic Party. I'm not anymore. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because I used to keep up with politics very, very carefully, and I was major involved with them. So I know how the process works. Unless Joe Biden withdraws, he will be the Democratic nominee. There's no way around it. There's only a couple of ways that he cannot be on the ticket. Number one, he withdraws. Number two, he is unable to serve. And that's it. That's the only two ways. Other than that, the delegates have been chosen, and they are committed to vote for him on the first round. And he has sufficient delegates to win the nomination. And there's nothing that Barack Obama can do about it, and there's nothing that any other American can do about it. And I told this to my wife, and I am not hinting at any existing knowledge or that I think that this will definitely happen. But we haven't had a president assassinated in many years. And the Democrats are desperate. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay.
Well, I'm thinking if he's a doppelganger, and that's already happened, and they're just like looking to find a reason to do it now.
Well, David, I'm just
even
going.
If the news comes out.
I'm going back to the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah, and the way they happened before, it was all inside jobs. All the other ones, right?
Justice Scalise, I think was his name, and he died, for no reason with a pillow over his head.
Yeah.
Okay. So, just take it for what it's worth. I'm not saying anything's going to happen, and I'm not hinting at it, and I'm not hoping for it. I'm definitely not hoping for it. I wouldn't wish that for anybody.
No, we pray for his salvation.
Right. I'm just saying, be careful. Be careful. The Democrats are really that way. Okay. I'm going to play this one for you, Mark, and I want to get your impressions on it. This is France, and I know England and France haven't really gotten along a lot over the millennia, but I know that being right there, I know that you know a lot more about it than we do over here in the United States. Let's listen to this.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. The latest opinion polls in France make especially grim reading for President Emmanuel Macron, following his decision to call a snap parliamentary election after the strong performance by the country's far right in this month's European elections. It was a gamble by Macron to stake his reputation on an effort to get the French public to return to the centre, and the polls suggest it may not be paying off. The far-right Rassemblement National party is forecast to win 30 36% of the vote, with Macron's political allies trailing by 15 points, raising the prospect of major change at the top of French politics.
We haven't had the hard-right government since Vichy France under Marshal Pétain, so it shows you how dramatic and potentially tragic this is.
Agnès Poirier is a French writer and broadcaster. She says defeat would not necessarily mean the end of the Macron presidency.
The president can still appoint a prime minister from the first bloc with the most seats. But Marine Le Pen said, we want an absolute majority, otherwise we refuse to cohabit with the president. He could resort to forming a unity government from anyone without any allegiance with both extremes.
The first round of voting takes place this weekend, with the second round on July the 7th. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
All right, Mark, I'm going to go to you right away on this one because, this election is tomorrow in France. And it looks like he's going to lose. How bad, I don't know. But I don't really know how their stuff works, parliamentary elections and all that stuff. I know it's not a two-party system like it is here. So anyway, whatever you can tell us about it and what you believe, what you're hearing.
What is very interesting about the French system is that the president can dissolve their parliament. He can then ask for an election. There's a number of words that have been thrown out there. One is far right. So this is a trope that is going on in the UK, is going on in Europe. So when they say, they've also said, the far right are on the march. Well, as the incredible Douglas Murray, UK journalist and worldwide, turned around and said, well, I've been over in Europe recently and I haven't seen anyone on the march at all. Because when they say the far right trope, they are meaning people that believe in their country, nationalism. They believe in strong borders. They want a strong economy. They want people to put their country first. Right. And then we get called far right. It's very interesting that Pétain's name came up and the Vichy government. Not something that the French should be very proud of. They were basically a collaboratory government within sort of mid to South France with the Nazis. The Nazis allowed them to rule, which then meant within the Vichy Pétain framework that appallingly there would have been many Jews that were rounded up and then taken to death camps. So people are not talking about that kind of thing. Macron is in power. He created the party that he then represents. He actually created that. We have to remember that Macron is an ex-banker. What a surprise. There's a number of things that are very questionable about him, which I won't go into. I'll just leave that out there. People can do some research. Now, Marine Le Pen is she is rising in the polls. I think people in France have had enough. The immigration issue in France, just like Germany, just like in the UK, is huge. I mean, one of the reasons why we have this immigration problem is because of France, because going back to 1962, because of the French involvement, their empire within Arabic countries, Morocco, etc., they then had a policy from 1962 that then became embedded in European Union policy, which was to lean towards being pro-Arab, and with the links by 1973 of the dialogue between Arab countries and European countries, as a wonderful book by Bataillon points out called Eurabia. This dialogue then began to really take off in 1973, where Arabic countries that they were involved with under empire is asking the French to show them in good light. Now, the immigration has not ever been discussed with European countries at all. So this is now having, I believe this is having an impact an impact on the borders. And of course, as you quite rightly say, we've had a few fracas with France over the years, from the Battle of Agincourt, the Battle of Waterloo. And we now have another frisson, which is the fact that we have immigrants coming over the Channel. We pay France £500 million a year, or over the last few years, to deal with this issue on our behalf, to stop the boats leaving French soil and coming over to Dover, coming over to our side of the pond. We have just celebrated the 80th year of the Normandy landings, which is the same stretch of water which brave men, American servicemen, went over in landing craft and landed at beaches like Omaha and took 10,000 dead and injured in one day. This is the sacrifice that Americans have made. To put it in the historical context, this is a sacrifice that you can even argue that Mr. de Gaulle, Charles de Gaulle, during the Second World War, and then after, you wonder whether he was actually very grateful for that on behalf of America and the UK, which is another very interesting subject. So that's what is going on. Immigration is a huge issue, but it seems to be embedded within European policy. Now, to jump to us, and there is
hang on. We're going to get to you in a minute. Okay, this is just France right now, and I agree with you on this. I'm thinking that France is, they're changing their system. I mean, they're changing their leadership, I should say, not their system. But in your opinion, is this a positive or a negative change for France as it relates to the world, and specifically Israel?
The key thing is this, right? In regard to Israel, we know, as Genesis 12 says, if you bless my people, I will bless you. If you curse my people, I will curse you. I'm afraid to say that within the European political system, and I would say this is why I've mentioned Batailleur's book, where mentioned from 1973, that there is a pro-Palestine leaning, to say the least. It's then embedded politically.
So that is that through all parties, or is there one? It may be like here, the Republican Party at least is still solidly behind Israel. Is there a party in France that is still solidly behind Israel, or has that just completely gone away now?
To be frank with you, JD, I can't make a comment on that. But what I will make a comment on is that there are French Jewish citizens who are taking up Aliyah to go back to Israel, which has been going on over the last few weeks. Of course, the last few months since October the 7th, and that is accelerating.
Oh man, okay. Well, now David disappeared. I'm not sure. I guess we've lost him for a minute. He knows how to get there. He is. He's back. He's back. I don't know what happened, David. But anyway, I was just about to go to time warp or something. Okay.
It was a different time warp.
Okay. Now, just for the sake of time here, I'm going to move ahead now, because I still think that there's things that we could talk about with France, but I want to get into more about the UK. And let me see. Okay. First of all, I'll read this thing about France first. The far right extends its poll lead. Now, they've got a vote tomorrow, and then they've got a July 7th, what they call the July 7th decider. And it looks like...
Yeah, don't they do things a little differently over there? Whereas you have to get half of the vote, but since there's so many parties, what they do is they take the top two and then re-vote. Something like that? As opposed to, hey, we only get two people to pick from?
Yeah. There is a thing called proportional representation. That they're taking the proportion, as you've said, David, and that moves forward. JD, there's one important thing I forgot to say.
Okay.
That within Europe, within France, within Germany, and of course you could argue then within Italy, there has been a swing. There is beginning this swing to what they would say to right of centre politics. Far
Okay.
right is another description,
Yeah.
and that will then, in a minute, lead into we'll say where we are at in regard to the UK in a second.
Okay. Now here's the UK. We're here. Okay. Now your UK general election is on July the 4th, so that's coming right up. Now,
Interesting day they picked.
Yeah, Americans' Independence Day. Okay, crazy. Okay. Now, I didn't know that the United Kingdom was holding debates. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Sunak has been debating, what's his name here, Starmer?
Starmer, yeah.
And according to this report, and this is out of the Associated Press, by the way, it says that the biggest round of applause from the last debate that these guys had was reserved for audience member Robert Blaskok, who stood up in the middle of this debate and said, "Are you two really the best we've got for the next prime minister of our great country?" That was the moment of the UK debate, which was met with a lot of applause because you actually had an audience at your debate. So I want to know what you think of Sunak. I want to know why he called an election that he could have put off for a little bit, and then. Well, I guess before I do that, I need to read this too, because this is a part of it. I got a sheet here. I don't know if you all see this thing on screen or not. Probably not. We got two parties in the United States, Republican and Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Here, we got the Labor Party. Okay, I'm just going to go through these real quick. Labor Party, 41% expected to vote for them. Conservatives, 20% expected to vote for them. Reform UK, 16%. Lib Democrats, 11%. Green Party, 6%. The SNP Party, whatever that is, 3%. And the Plaid Cymru Party, less than 1%. Now, what's
They
going
must be
on?
Scottish.
What is going on over there, Mark? What in the heck is going on? Why did they call an election to start with? And what's happened to the Conservative Party?
Well, the first thing to say, the SNP is the Scottish National Party. Plaid Cymru is the Welsh Party.
Okay.
Why did Sunak cornet? That's a very good question. One rumour could be that the 1922 committee that appoints the leader of the Conservative Party, and I will say this, JD, they are not conservative. They have not got a single ounce of conservatism within them, except from maybe one or two people like Suella Braverman. You could say them Priti Patel or Rees-Mogg, but no, they are not conservatives. They are, I would say, the liberal elite. So what is going on? Maybe what's going on is that Sunak has had enough of being prime minister, and that he wishes to go back to California, where he then left in 2014-15, and to then go and manage a hedge fund or head up another department for his father-in-law's company called Infosys. So he was not elected by the people of this country. Can I just say that?
Right.
The prime minister that was elected in 2019 was Boris Johnson. They got rid of Boris Johnson, and then they had an election to replace Boris Johnson within the leadership of the party. And the leadership of the party that decides that is the 1922 committee. Two names eventually surfaced. One was Liz Truss. The other was Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak lost. Liz Truss was put in for 45 days. The banking system and everyone else came against her. You could then argue that she did not present her economic changes properly with her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng, and then the rest is history, because she was on about lowering taxes, wanting to really fire up the economy and all the rest. Now, Sunak then replaced her. He was literally put in. He's a technocrat. He's got about as much personality as a wet sponge. Now, there was a scandal. There was a scandal because Boris Johnson was then accused of having a party in lockdown, attending a party at number 10, in lockdown, ignoring all that, and then the whole accusation of having photographs from number 11. I'm not saying that Sunak took them personally, but there was a real ganging up against Boris Johnson. You raise a very good point. You have, in America, there is a uni-party. Sorry, there is a uni-party within Washington, D.C.
Amen.
Over here, we have a uni-party between Labour, the Conservatives, the Welsh Nats, the Scots Nats, the Sinn Féin in Southern Ireland. Now, that is what we've had. In 2016, all of those parties turned around and said, most of the members of those parties, except a few, turned around and said, we should stay in the EU. We should not leave the EU. And I remember saying, I feel as though I'm living in a communist country. So what is going on? Sunak came out and declared an election. And there was one rumour that was going that too many Conservative members were going to put letters in to the 1922 committee, which are responsible for choosing who's going to be leader of the Conservative Party. And so many letters would have gone in that he would have lost. So there is a rumour that he decided to call their bluff. Now, you are absolutely right, JD. Bordering on turning the economy round, turning the country round, inflation coming down, etc., etc. And if he had waited, he's got young advisors who are early 40s. Sunak, I think, is 44, 45 years of age himself. This is the situation that we are in. You've given some poll numbers. Do not believe those poll numbers whatsoever.
Oh, okay.
David Cameron in 2015 won the election. David Cameron said that we could have a referendum in regard to leaving the EU because at that time there was something like 4 million, between about 4 million plus votes voting for the United Kingdom Independence Party, which was the party pressurising for a vote in regard to us leaving the EU. So he thought he'd lance that boil. He didn't, because we won. 17,410,752 people, with the majority of over 1 million voted out. What has that got to do with what's happening now? It comes down to a man called Nigel Farage.
Yes.
Until a couple of weeks ago, he had declared, when the election was declared, and it was a shock to everyone, including to Reform UK Party, it was a shock to everyone. And then what happened was Nigel turned and said, I'm not standing. I'm going to go over to America and help Donald Trump win the presidential election. Well, that did not go down very well, and I'm certain a number of people bent his ear. And Nigel then said, I am now going to stand, and he's standing in Clacton. He literally, by making that decision, the election came alive overnight. He came alive because whatever people think of Nigel Farage is like a lightning rod to the left wing, to the wokerati, to people that think that there are more than two sexes and all the rest.
Okay, let me break in. Let me break in and ask you this: is Nigel Farage, is he the equivalent of a Donald Trump in the UK?
I think the easiest way to immediately answer that, how he's seen, is to say yes. Okay. Because he believes in the nation state. He wants strong borders, etc., etc. The problem is that then you would say that in many ways Nigel would describe himself as a libertarian. But I'm also thinking he's starting to walk back from that in an interesting way to understand, maybe begin to understand what true conservatism is. My criticism at times would be that there needs to be a strong undergirding, and other people greater than me have said this, a strong undergirding of ideology. But he knows he's taking the establishment on. This is a man that has been debanked, with just etc. in the past, and the other way the establishment has come against.
I'm gonna break in again. I'm gonna break in again, but only because I've taken up most of the time, and I want to give David the last 4 minutes or 4.5 minutes here to talk to you.
No,
Go ahead.
I'm good. Let's just do this. I'm learning a lot here. So I relent my time to Mark.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well,
Continue.
like I said, I just wanted, I didn't want you to be left out. I've got a habit of taking up
I'm
too much
noisy
time.
enough. Don't worry about that.
I'm just grateful David isn't Chuck Schumer, because he'll be insisting on having his 4 minutes. So I thank you.
Well, I do have that. There's a joke even among the Democrats here, and it's where's the most dangerous place in America, and that's between Chuck Schumer and a camera.
And camera, absolutely right. So we are in an interesting position. We've just had a very interesting scandal where Channel 4 over here have said with a camera, undercover, filming who they thought was a Reform UK candidate coming out, or activist coming out with a load of racist comments. Has turned out to be an actor. I have interviewed 23 plus 26 maybe different candidates in regard to Reform UK. What is Reform UK? Reform UK is the citizenship of this great nation that have stood up, who know what's going on, who see the two-party system, so to speak, equivalent, and absolutely had enough, because we want to see strong borders and etc. We actually want to see an opportunity to fire up our economy and start to, instead of being wealth distribution, wealth creation. However, just quickly, here's the important thing. We are not, and Sunak started off very well in regard to Israel, went over there supporting Bibi Netanyahu and all the rest. But we had this dreadful foreign secretary who suddenly came back, Mr. David Cameron. We'll have a referendum on the EU and we'll win, which he didn't win. So Cameron, the man that unleashed the bombing of Libya to get rid of Gaddafi with the then French Prime Minister Sarkozy and all the rest. Gaddafi then said, if you get rid of me, there'll be loads of boats coming over from North Africa, from Libya into Europe. He was absolutely right. David Cameron's never been accountable in regard to that. But he's back, and he is for two-state solution. He has been behind the scenes for a number of years, and also bluntly, very, very anti-Israel. I believe, as a dear friend of mine says, he is back on the scene for God to deal with him. We've then got within the Labour Party, within their manifesto, they have said, we are going to recognise Palestine. We're going to recognise the two-state solution.
I just don't get it. I don't understand how people can recognise a state that doesn't even exist at all.
I agree.
But
I agree.
Never did.
That's
part of that, JD. Part of that, JD, has to be said. It then relies on votes from a people group in regard to Muslims, followers of Islam, so people that would support a Palestinian state. So that is a demographic that they look to. Their deputy leader, Angela Rayner, infamously was on camera, literally doing that. Sorry, Joe.
Well, no, you're fine. I hate it because we're running out of time, and there's so much more to discuss, and so now this is going to have to be a really quick answer, Mark, because we're down here to seconds. But you're saying don't believe the polls. Does Farage have a real chance? Yes or no?
The party has a real chance to get a number of seats that could be above 20, which is quite a considerable achievement.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we'll look forward to that. Mark, I want to thank you again for coming on the show, and we always appreciate you coming on. And of course, we're going to ask you again because time's speeding up, people. If you haven't accepted the Lord yet, you need to do it before time runs out on you. It is an eternal decision, and that's something that you better take seriously. Until next time, good night and God bless.
Thanks again for joining us today for the Last Christian Radio Show. And be sure to tune in every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday right here and at www.lastchristian.net. Until the trumpet sounds.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.